Hi, my name is Jessica Hudson, and this is my presentation on overcrowding, which is an advocate for change within the prison system. The issue I chose to focus on is overcrowding in the prison system. It's a major problem within the corrections system and has a direct negative impact on the conditions within the prisons. This is an issue that plagues more than 115 countries, with most prisons at 100% or more capacity. Overcrowding in prisons leads to increased violence and mental health deterioration. Some of the other negative impacts, like I mentioned, one, mental health impacts, increased violence within the system, decreased availability of rehabilitation programs. There are poor living conditions with extended periods of time in confined conditions, inability to participate in activities outside of prison cells. All of those, so the inability to participate in activities outside of prison cells and the living conditions, all of that lends itself to the overcrowding. When the system is overcrowded, there are less employees, personnel to be able to monitor and allow prisoners to be able to go outside or to participate in activities that get them outside of their confined prison cells. This increases the violence because there's no outlet for them to be able to go out and have some type of recreation. Overcrowding in the prison system has been a major issue for more than 30 years. There's been little done to address this issue. Overcrowding makes it difficult for the prison employees to maintain a safe and healthy environment for prisoners and themselves. So, as you can imagine, with prisons that are overcrowded, the more populated they are, the less hands-on activity, the ability for the guards within those systems and those employees to monitor and control the environment, it becomes much harder. And so that's why it becomes a very unsafe and unhealthy environment for not only the prisoners, because the employees are not able to keep the prisoners safe from each other, but then they're also not able to protect their own selves because of the overcrowding. Some of the causes of this, one, which I believe is one of the most important and one of the major issues, is the lack of funding, the detainment of criminals awaiting trial, long-term prison sentences, repeat offenders released and being re-entered into the system, lack of rehabilitation to limit career criminals. So the issue with the repeat offenders where they're being released and then they're coming back into the system, part of that is the lack of rehabilitation, which I believe we have to have more funding to support programs that focus on the rehabilitation of the prisoners within the system. If we don't focus on that, then the offenders that are being released, they have not been rehabilitated, they enter back out into the community, and then they're committing the same crimes, maybe worse, and then they're re-entering the system. So it's a vicious cycle where they're just constantly within the system. Prevention. There are several initiatives that could be focused on to begin addressing the overcrowding issues plaguing prison systems nationwide. Funding, community-based corrections, the diversion of minors out of the system, pretrial alternatives, crime prevention, including rehabilitation. So I already talked a little bit about the rehabilitation, which a lot has to do with funding for those programs to be readily available. But pretrial alternatives and the community-based corrections, those go hand in hand with each other, I believe. So there are before a criminal, so when they are in the process of, they have not had a trial, but they're awaiting their trial date, there are options to have them within the community instead of being within the prison system. So instead of holding them within the corrections system, if there are programs that are available to have them monitored within the community, that would be an alternative which would decrease the number of inmates within the system. Sometimes, as you know, when they go to trial, they might be found not guilty. And so the time that they've served was really not necessary if they've been found to not be guilty. So that can eliminate some of that overcrowding issues that are within the systems. So like I already mentioned, the next slide is talking about funding. Funding from the prison system is an issue that is much harder to address. Increased funding for the expansion of juvenile facilities and focus facilities for the mentally incapacitated, women, and juveniles. That's one way that funds could help with the overcrowding. One, by increasing the rehabilitation programs so that we can try to prevent, part of a prevention type system to keep them from coming back in within the system. Also focus on working with our juveniles. We don't want them to become career criminals. So having programs that are available to work with them and teach them how to be in the community, giving them the resources that they need so that they can be successful and not continue to stay on a path of where they're entering into the system over and over again. Community-based corrections, this is an area that I think is very important. So community-based corrections is an area that can be utilized to monitor criminals outside of the prison system, effectively reducing the prison population. Community-based programs serve as an opportunity to teach criminals how to function in society. Programs need to be developed that not only enforce the terms of probation or parole, but offer basic classes and rehabilitation services that can be attended within the community. This again is very important to stop the repeat offenders, to continue to go within the system. If we can monitor them while they're on parole, while they're on probation within the community, this would, of course, would mean there needs to be an expansion of programs. There needs to be an expansion of the people that want to support these programs so that they can be within their community and learn how to function within their community. I think it's very important, and community-based corrections to me is another way to focus on rehabilitation, and in its own right can be rehabilitation, teaching them how to be within their own community. Diversion of minors, developing programs that keep minors out of the prison system and focus more on community-based corrections. This is a long-term benefit to the minor and the prison system. If we're able to rehabilitate and provide minors with the tools they need to be successful in their communities, we will reduce the risk of minors turning into career criminals. I spoke about that a little bit ago. I think it's very important that we focus our attention on our minors. They are going to grow up, and we don't want the path that they were currently on to be the one that they stay on. So rehabilitation, having community-based programs available to them that can teach them and support them is going to be a major ability. It's going to be something that is going to be very important for the future, for their future. Pretrial alternatives. Pretrial alternatives would be for those suspected criminals awaiting trial to be held outside the prison system. This would need to be crime-based and would be part of the community-based corrections. When I say that it needs to be based upon the crime, if you have someone that is suspected of murder, for example, that's not someone that I would expect to be released back into the community to await their trial. But for other offenses, such as maybe a DUI or for robbery, something like that, depending on the nature of the crime, I would say that probably how violent it was, those things I think need to be considered when looking at pretrial alternatives. So there should be more focus on criminals that can be offered a bond and await their trial at home, which is keeping them within the community. This is an option that needs to be monitored and offered in specific cases that the criminal poses minimal flight risk and risks their community. Expansion of home-based corrections would be key in this initiative being successful. Rehabilitation. Rehabilitation programs are important to the success of rehabilitating criminals that can be and providing them with the best chance to not become a career criminal. This is one of the most important programs that can be offered to a prisoner. Programs that are offering services to treat and rehabilitate criminals hinges on funding to increase the availability to offer such programs. These programs should not only be offered while incarcerated, but should extend to the community and be part of the process for release. So this is the end of my presentation. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to present, and thank you for watching.